Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. Time for us to roll out yet another show. I see top of the trending list, for whatever reason, on my Twitter account anyway, the news that Maryland, the state of Maryland, to lift its restrictions on restaurants, bars, religious facilities, and gyms starting Friday, because everybody's totally ready for that. And because Larry Hogan, governor of Maryland, for whatever reason, is a Republican. I'm not really sure how that happens, but it does happen every once in a while in Maryland. It's one of those weird states that otherwise votes overwhelmingly Democratic in federal elections, but when it comes to the governorship, they occasionally go the other way. So we'll see how that works out for them. Of course, with them being such a close neighbor here in Virginia, ordinarily there's more coordination among the states that lie close together and share significant borders, but not when the governors are of opposite parties. So we'll see whether that leaks over into our area or not. I don't think they're entirely ready for that, but it's not just a wide open 100% opening the way they did in Texas. I imagine he thinks he's being cautious. I think I see here a screen grab here from one of the local stations listing some of the changes and restrictions. Capacity limits lifted on outdoor and indoor dining at restaurants and food service establishments, but I don't think they're entirely clear about when they say they're lifting them. Does that mean they're eliminating them or just raising them to 50% capacity or something like that? Let's see. Seated and distanced service only. Crowding in bars is not permitted. So there you go. There just won't be any crowding in the bars because they won't permit it. Well, I think they will. Capacity limits lifted on retail, religious facilities, fitness centers, casinos, personal services, indoor recreational establishments. Large outdoor and indoor venues may expand to 50% capacity, including conferences, wedding venues, concert venues, conventions, theaters, racing facilities, very important, and other entertainment and sporting venues. So I think they're going a little overboard here. I don't know how they've been doing with their vaccinations, but I don't believe I've seen them at the top of any of the national lists for the distribution of their vaccines. Hope it works out. Won't be quite the disaster it could have been a few weeks ago before there was a certain amount of vaccination circulating in the community, but I think we're far from the point at which we ought to be doing this. But what can I tell you? I'm not the governor of Maryland. So there you have it. Just keep an eye on how things go in Maryland, and it'll all stay in Maryland. There's no need to worry about the national capital area or the most populous region of Virginia. Okay. So there you have it. All right, Greg Tworkin. All right, he's ready to roll in on this one. We have a coronavirus situation going on. So Greg is right here on the spot. By the way, I guess in a few matter of hours, whether I rearrange this thing or leave it where it is, I will care a little bit less about what goes on in Maryland. I have a vaccine appointment for Friday, and I thought I was being really smart by taking it on a Friday, and then in 2 weeks or 3 weeks when they give you the follow-up shot, where some people were having some slight reactions to the second shots, I thought, oh, well, I'll do it on a Friday afternoon after the show is over, and I'll have Saturday to recover. But I'm thinking of bumping it up to see if I can actually grab a free appointment today, because spring break is coming, and I'm thinking maybe the sooner the better. All right, Greg's here to tell me whether that's I guess it's probably always a wise idea to move up your vaccination if you can. Right, Greg? Good morning.
Absolutely. Good morning. The second shot isn't precisely scheduled. That is to say, once you grab your first shot, then you'll be eligible to make an appointment for the second one, but it's not automatic that it's like 21 days to the day of when you calculate it. It just doesn't work out that way.
Well, then maybe I'll see after the show if there's anything free this afternoon. I'll get an extra couple of days before spring break starts.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on with coronavirus. It's like one of the two big stories. And so maybe we'll just do a little bit on that.
Right.
It was interesting. You're hearing a lot in the media, which is not completely, totally accurately covered, believe it or not, about differences between countries. We talked about that on the show a little bit last week. There's a lot of stuff going on that we don't fully understand, but previous exposure to a similar virus, age of the population, accuracy in reporting, age differences between countries, they all matter. Outdoor, indoor, what kind of climate you have, and what kind of weather, but mostly what kind of climate. It all matters, and so we don't totally understand the differences between countries. But within the United States, there are similarities between states and differences between states. Certainly one difference is the way the states have approached it. Similarity is that all states have been hit regardless. And there's been something of a debate to the point of trying to elevate Ron DeSantis into a COVID star because Florida's done as well as all the states that shut down further. But that's not actually correct. Interesting story in the New York, in the Los Angeles Times today.
Oh, okay.
I subscribe to a lot of papers, dozens.
That's nice.
It's part of what I think is my role here in trying to make sure that I understand the news. And the LA Times is one of them. So it's just that you don't have to subscribe to dozens of them the way I do, but, do your local and then do a national when you subscribe and support your paper so you have news. This is the LA Times. From the earliest days of the pandemic, California and Florida took significantly different courses that came to symbolize the deep divisions in how to respond to COVID-19. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the two states, it isn't an even playing field.
Okay, sure.
For much of 2020, California had a dramatically lower COVID death rate from COVID-19. And so they're showing a graph that I will show David, and then the rest of you will have to look at either his summary tomorrow or this afternoon or the LA Times. For much of 2020, California had a dramatically lower COVID-19 death rate. California in blue, Florida in gold. Florida had a cumulative rate as much as 84% higher than California's last fall, and then the winter surge slammed California and the gap narrowed. Now, Republican Florida Ron DeSantis is garnering praise in some conservative circles, while Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is facing a potential recall over his handling of COVID-19. But experts say turning the complex evaluation of the pandemic into a blue versus red political showdown is unwise and deceptive, as each state has its own unique vulnerabilities and assets. The shrinking difference in the death rates is likely a product of California's higher levels of poverty, density, overcrowding, and climate that make it particularly susceptible to coronavirus spread, experts say. Mm-hmm. If California had Florida's death rate, 6,000 more Californians would be dead, and tens of thousands of additional patients likely would have landed in already overburdened hospitals. Among the 50 states, California has the 29th highest number of deaths per million, and Florida ranks 25th. But the comparison of Florida and California has caught the eye of public health experts. They're confident that mask wearing and staying home reduces spread, but acknowledge that California's strict rules became less effective as exhaustion set in. California was one of the ones to do it first, and California is one of the ones that tired of it quickly. Okay. Not quickly, but tired of it first.
I guess, yeah. Okay.
So that has a lot to do with how things look, and that's kind of important. So in the end, what's important is understanding that once you get your vaccine, and I got my first, and David's going to get his first, and then we'll get our second, depending upon which vaccine happened to be available that day. I'm Moderna. I don't know what you're going to do.
Me neither.
And the bottom line is there are things after you're fully vaccinated that you can do. Hug your grandkids if you have them. See your kids.
I don't have any of those.
But if you are fully vaccinated, it's still unwise to go to bars and congregate. Now, Florida's spring break, for example, and other people's spring break, that's going to be outdoors is much less of a risk than the indoor part of it. So, that all has to be taken into consideration. And we talked about this last week. It's bad messaging to say that, yes, you've been fully vaccinated, but you can't change anything. That's not the case. In fact, I'm starting to see the public service announcement, the PSAs, including the less hard news segments that generally come toward the end of the news segment, national and local, that have grandmothers saying, "Oh, I can now hug my 3-year-old." And that's really the message that people want to convey. What difference does it make if you get the vaccine? You can hug your grandkids.
That's nice. People said they wanted that.
People said they wanted that. People said they wanted grandkids.
You know,
and if you want them, you know,
well, that's a different
and
thing.
if you have them,
just
then you get to hug them. You know, frankly, if you know the family, you can even hug somebody else's grandkid once you've been fully vaccinated. And if you know the family, you can get together without masks. And so things will change, but not to the point where you can go to bars and hang out. I'm not sure that the people who want to hug their grandkids are the same people that want to go out and congregate at bars at 2 a.m.
Later,
but
perhaps.
If they are, you can do one, but you can't do the other.
I guess if you start early enough, you can hug people at bars, and then eventually you'll have grandkids to hug. Yeah,
eventually. That's how it works. That's the whole idea.
Right.
So that's one big story. And again, a reminder that it's white Republicans that are most vaccine resistant at this particular point in time.
Yes.
There was a Civics had a poll about that. We showed the graph, and it was of interest. But in the pundit roundup today, I point out that's been updated. So Republican intent as of March 7th for white Republicans is the same as all Republicans because most Republicans are white Republicans. Right. I checked that, and it's true. Republican intent as of March 7th, yes, I'll get a vaccine, 26%. Already got it, 18. No, 41. Unsure, 15.
All right. How about the people who want to go crowded into bars? Are they mostly white Republicans?
I don't know. People who want to go out and crowd with bars with their grandkids who are left-handed. If you look at the entire population of Republicans, and if you look at the population of white Republicans, the numbers are just about exactly the same.
All right.
Right. So black and Latinos and white Democrats much more likely to want to get a vaccine. So that's going on. The big week, of course, for Biden includes today the House voting on his $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, which is also a COVID relief plan, depending upon what outlet you look at. CNN says Biden and his COVID relief plan prove popular in new CNN poll. In the new poll, 61% support the $1.9 trillion economic relief bill produced by Biden, and that's what it is. It's not stimulus, it's economic relief.
Yes.
And expected to pass in the House Wednesday. And several key provisions of the bill are even more popular. A broad majority of Americans, 85%, say they support policies in the bill that would provide larger tax credits for families and make them easier for low-income households to claim, including majorities across party lines. 95% of Democrats, 73% of Republicans support it.
I thought that, yeah.
Around three-quarters favor provisions to provide funding to facilitate a return to the classroom for K through 12 students. 77%, and sending stimulus checks worth up to $1,400 per person to most families and individuals, 76%. Both of these policies also have majority support across party lines. 55% of Republicans support each. Among Democrats, support tops 90% for each. A smaller majority, 59%, say they back providing $350 billion in aid to state and local governments, and that policy sparks the sharpest partisan divide. 88% of Democrats, 28% of Republicans. So it turns out that states hire people. So that's also local jobs. And there's some stories in my local paper today about Danbury, the largest town near me, being delighted with the unexpected amount of money that might come in and how they might put it to use.
Money. That's
so
nice.
The new Politico Morning Consult poll, I was just reading the CNN poll, this is a different one, has Biden at 59% job approval on COVID relief. Three-quarters of respondents said they support the package with strong backing across the political spectrum. 90% of Democrats, 7 in 10 independents, nearly 6 in 10 Republicans. 51% strongly support the bill overall. So it turns out that it's a really, really popular bill, and that's going to help it pass. Now, for Morning Consult, other things of interest. Morning Consult says more GOP voters reported hearing a lot about the Dr. Seuss controversy than any other news item we tested in the latest poll.
Oh, that's terrible. I mean,
so let's look at a lot, okay? When we talk about a lot. Former President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump getting vaccinated for COVID-19 back in January without telling anybody.
Yes.
15% of Republican voters are aware of that.
Come on, people.
16%, a lot. They've heard a lot about it. 30% have heard some. So that's 45% if you want to be charitable. But in terms of hearing a lot about it, this is telling you what Fox News and conservative outlets cover. 16% have heard that Jackson, Mississippi is going weeks without water following a winter storm.
Yeah,
and the feds can't help because the governor of Mississippi hasn't asked for help.
Why would you
His
do
response has been, let them pay their bills first. Pay the water bill.
He's a great guy.
Then come talk to me. Of course, Jackson's majority black. Biden saying the U.S. is on track to have COVID-19 vaccine for every U.S. adult by late May. 25% have heard a lot about that if you're a GOP voter.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Biden referring to Mississippi and Texas governors' decisions as Neanderthal thinking, that's 35%. But 42% know that Texas and Mississippi governors are ending COVID restrictions. 44% know that the House is about to pass this big bill. So despite the Republicans' efforts, people have heard about that. 48% have heard that Dr. Seuss Enterprises is pulling some books.
Have they, though? Because I suspect that 48% think that Democrats are banning these Dr. Seuss books.
Well,
if not more.
Republicans think they're banning Green Eggs and Ham.
Well,
because McCarthy
the
keeps
wrong
reading
books.
it.
Yeah, I mean, not only do they think Democrats are just banning the books for political reasons, they think they're banning an entirely separate catalog of books that are really at issue here. And no one's banning anything, so whatever.
Right.
Okay.
In the same Morning Consult poll, they have some vaccine data, which is really kind of interesting. Even after vaccination, a quarter of Americans do not expect vaccinations to change their comfort level at all.
What is that?
Those are the people who get vaccinated and still don't want to go to bars.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe, I see. I got you. We'll change your southern comfort level, which you can have at home if you wish.
50%.
Yeah. Huh.
Okay.
So they don't like bars.
Now, seeing other vaccinated people but still taking precautions, 50% feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
But 19% don't. Returning to your normal routine, 40% feel comfortable after getting vaccinated fully, and 24% don't. That's the, quarter don't feel totally comfortable with this.
Yeah. Maybe I'm there.
Okay. Now, interestingly, even if you're fully vaccinated.
Yes. All right.
Traveling internationally, seeing people who've not been vaccinated without taking precautions, these are not popular things. Attending a large sporting event or concert, only 27% think that getting a COVID vaccine would make them more comfortable.
It would make me more comfortable, but I wouldn't be going. Yeah, I guess not. Not yet. Even if Larry Hogan
in other words,
it's okay.
Whatever the governors do,
yeah,
and this is one of the big differences in trying to interpret a Ron DeSantis and his response, or a Tate Reeves, or a Greg Abbott in Texas. Okay. You can open the place, but it doesn't mean people will show up. If you say all the bars are open, but you have to wear masks and maintain social distance like you do in Connecticut, well, what's the point of going to a bar if you have to maintain social distance?
You'll get your mask all wet.
That's like hooking up by Zoom. People, aren't going to do that. But if you're talking about fully opening, and you don't need masks, and you could crowd and pack together like sardines, like you can in Texas, that doesn't mean people will do it. They vote with their feet.
I hope not.
And just because the governor says it's okay, the establishment may not say it's okay, and the folks who patronize the establishment may not say it's okay. So it's not automatic that things turn around. So Florida may be very loose with the rules. It doesn't mean that people in Florida are going to follow what the governor's saying and just forget about it. Maybe they won't.
Oh, good. I hope not.
So that's one of the ways that, in addition to playing with the numbers a little bit, because California has done better than Florida, but you have to take into account the activity of the state, regular voters, folks who live there, not what the government says. And so when California people, denizens, decided that they were going to ignore some of the rules, things spiked up. In Florida, when people decided that except for going to the beaches, which everybody was going to do because it's outdoors, they're going to follow the rules more stringently than the governor did, you wind up with an equilibrium, but not because of the policy of the politicians.
Interesting.
And so politicians are always running in front of the parade saying, hey, I'm leading. And that may or may not be true. Just always worth remembering.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's, I guess, that explains in the end how it could come out, relatively close. With
people, they do the same thing. There's some people, like the Morning Consult poll, that will not feel comfortable and won't do stuff regardless of the rules. And there's some people that'll do it anyway regardless of the rules. And they're probably the same in all states.
Yeah. By the way, Georgia has a bill in the legislature to ban voting with your feet. So, watch out
and
for
also you can't get food and drink while you're waiting online to walk away.
So
that's why, again, it's a big week for Biden. Not only is his $1.9 trillion stimulus plan going, but by the end of the week, Merrick Garland and Representative Fudge and a fellow named Michael Reagan, I think on the money side, will be confirmed. And Deb Haaland's cloture vote will probably be on Thursday. So Biden's going to get a whole bunch of people confirmed,
good,
which is a good thing.
Yes.
And at the same time, here's another thing that's different than the way things used to be. On Anderson Cooper, he had Chuck Schumer on.
Okay.
Who will always get less credit than Nancy Pelosi for being a leader, but in fact has brought his fractious group together and got stuff done. Anderson Cooper says, if Dems could have done more, should they have done more, or could they have done more to win GOP votes like Collins and Murkowski on this COVID bill? Because they got none. Everything was done on party line. And here's what's different. Schumer says no.
Okay.
He made a big mistake in 2009 and 2010. Susan Collins was part of that mistake. Calls her out by name. There's a quote. We cut back on the stimulus dramatically, and we stayed in recession for 5 years. So he's not chasing Republicans, trying to get them to sign on the bill. Chuck Grassley basically said, yeah, I strung them along back in the Obama days, then said no, and too bad for them.
I mean, what was the point of having him admit that if not to pay attention to it?
Right. So, Schumer said, well, been there, done that. We're not having that. Yeah. And if you don't like it, you're going to have to start voting with us. We gave Murkowski the amendment. Nothing. She voted against the bill. Susan Collins can say whatever she wants. I want this, I want that, I want that. You give it to her, what happens? She votes against the bill. You want to do it, he says, in so many words? Look at Joe Manchin. Joe wanted something. We gave it to him. He voted with us. If you're not going to do that, shut up and go home. So I think it's really nice to hear that from Schumer. He's done it nicely. He doesn't get people as mad at him as he would if, say, Ilhan Omar said exactly the same thing, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said exactly the same thing, or even Nancy Pelosi. But the fact of the matter is, he said it. He's right, and he's doing it, which is also right.
Yeah, I'll give him credit for that. Well, I will now, thanks to your doing it first. I'll follow you. I agree.
Yeah.
Important.
So that's all good.
Okay.
Now,
I'll take it.
This is Eric Levitz writing in New York Magazine, The Intelligencer. Biden's COVID relief bill is a big effing deal.
Aha. I knew it. It is.
Now, he writes, Joe Biden won, progressives lost. I don't know why people are focused on sticking it to progressives, but hippie bashing is like a thing. It's always been. For weeks after the 2020 election, this was the conventional wisdom, he writes, about the outcome. That Biden won and progressives lost. As Politico wrote on November 5th, during Barack Obama's presidency, Biden's propensity for cutting deals with Mitch McConnell became a running source of aggravation for liberals. Now it's going to be aggregation.
Yeah, everybody's into
do it so often. Now it will be the key to getting anything done at all. And liberals scarcely disagreed, but Georgia voters proceeded to prove the pundits wrong.
All right.
And then Chuck Schumer's majority did too. By giving Democrats full control of the federal government, Peach State voters didn't merely secure Biden's right to appoint an EPA director without McConnell's consent. They also secured America the full employment, fiscal policy, and universal child allowance progressives have sought for generations.
Yes.
That's why it's a big effing deal. At the signing ceremony for the Affordable Care Act in 2010, Biden was famously caught on a hot mic whispering into Obama's ear, "It's a big effing deal."
Right.
Biden's own American Rescue Plan is just as deserving.
Okay.
And so the Democratic Party's approach to legislative strategy has fundamentally changed. Many of the pundits are, in fact, writing this. This happens to be Levitt's version of it. To appreciate the concrete significance of the American Rescue Plan for ordinary Americans, and by extension, the significance of having 50 instead of 49 Democrats in the Senate, here are a few of the ways life in the U.S. is about to change as a result of a unified Democratic government coming to power. And by the way, this time, another mistake that Obama made, being too modest, that ain't going to happen.
Okay.
Democrats are going to fan out all over the country saying, we did this. Our name may not be on the check, but that's just grandiose nonsense. What we did is this, and this, and it's going to make you richer. The average household in the bottom quintile of America's economic ladder will see its annual income rise by more than 20%.
That'd be good.
A family of four with one working parent and one unemployed one will have $12,460 more in government benefits.
All right.
The poorest single mothers in America will receive at least $3,000 more per child in government support, along with $1,400 for themselves, and additional funds for nutritional assistance and rental aid. Child poverty in the U.S. will drop by half. More than 1 million unionized workers who were poised to lose their pensions will now receive 100% of their promised retirement benefits for at least the next 30 years.
Oh, yes.
And some of those unionized workers have been voting Republican.
True. Time to change their minds on it.
America's indigenous communities will receive $31.2 billion in aid,
wow.
The largest investment the federal government has ever made in the country's native people. Black farmers will receive $5 billion in recompense for a century of discrimination and dispossession, a miniature reparation that will have huge consequences for individual African-American agriculturalists, many of whom will escape from debt and retain their land.
Perfect.
And there's even more, and we'll cover that after the break.
Yeah, all right, yeah, this was a good choice. I had put this article away, too, just because I felt like we didn't, we hadn't spent enough time running through a list of all these things that were tucked into the bill, only some of which we were aware of. Joan expanded our horizons on it a little bit yesterday. We'll do a little bit more after this. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue on with Greg Dworkin. We were just running down the list, and it's good to see a extensive bulleted list like this of all of the top hits in the COVID relief bill.
This isn't even comprehensive.
We're not,
and
we're not done.
David and I were talking over the break, as we do our cooperative overlapping thing of interrupting each other. That
music.
The reason that this passed, and it didn't before, of course, is because Georgia, but it's also because the white landed gentry, who otherwise used to be known as the United States Senate, no longer have the complete total majority now.
Right.
Democrats do. So that's why you can pass all this good stuff. Why haven't we done all this stuff before? Because we couldn't.
Yeah.
And now we can.
I mean, a lot of it was like, well, sure. I was struck by the biggest investment in America's indigenous communities in history, and just
they've been around.
It's like 100 and something years since we've owed them this money here, or 200 really, like 200 plus if you start way at the beginning, 300. Right. But I mean, what can I tell you? At first, I was like, well, that's surprising that we haven't done any such sizable aid packages in the past, and then Greg was like, you forgot that our Senate was controlled by white supremacists. Oh, yeah, right. Shoot. All right, well, good.
So, or at least white landed gentry who saw their interest there. And I'm curious, at some point we'll hear about it, how much of that indigenous support actually goes to Alaska, Lisa Murkowski's state, who needs it and who have a very large indigenous population, who are often isolated and do remarkable things.
Right. Well,
I heard of a village, a remote village in Alaska, where if you sent vials a vaccine where you
okay.
can only get X amount and then there was a little left over in the vials,
Yeah.
that some of the vaccine would be wasted. So instead of moving the vaccine to the villages, they moved the village people to larger areas where they could everybody could get vaccinated. They wouldn't waste anything. So, people are really thinking and doing things. Alaska's different.
Yeah.
It's so isolated.
Right.
It's so big. It's just so different than the lower 48 that, people sometimes forget. Certainly my before times visit to Alaska changed the way I perceive the state.
That's the idea.
Oh, by the way, Wasilla's beautiful.
All of it?
Well,
it has
not
parts,
necessarily the
highlights.
mall, but, you got this nice little town surrounded by mountains. It's just gorgeous.
The backdrop is nice.
So large majority of Americans who earn less than $75,000 as individuals or less than $150,000 as couples will receive a $1,400 stimulus check for themselves and another for each child or adult dependent in their care. Most people know about that.
Yeah, we talked
But what they
about
didn't know maybe is that America's child care centers, you want to give money to kids, you're also giving money to the people who take care of them. America's child care centers will not go into bankruptcy en masse thanks to a $39 billion investment in the nation's care infrastructure. So it really was Infrastructure Week.
I think I'd like to find out about that one.
Virtually all states and municipalities in America will exit the pandemic in better fiscal health than pre-COVID, which is to say a great many layoffs of public employees and cutbacks in public services will be averted. Mm-hmm. That includes cops. For those of you who worry about defunding the police just got funded.
But so did
the firefighters. New York's bravest, not just New York's finest. No one in the United States will have to devote more than 8.5% of their income to paying for health insurance for at least the next 2 years, while the Affordable Care Act plans will become premium free for a large number of low-income workers. It'll truly become affordable, the way it was originally intended. America's unemployed will not see their federal benefits lapse this weekend and will have an extra $300 to spend every week for the first week in September.
Yes.
And that's a small sampling of the COVID relief bill's consequences, but it's sufficient to establish that something has dramatically changed in the Democrats' approach to wielding power. When pundits suggested progressives had little hope of getting major reform through a 50-vote Democratic majority, well, that was understood. And yet 12 years later, after the 60 in 2009, when you couldn't get it done with Joe Lieberman, right, Democrats managed to pass one of the largest fiscal programs in U.S. history within weeks of Biden's inauguration. Obama spent the better part of his first year trying to get bipartisan buy-in for the Affordable Care Act. Biden just slapped most of his own health care agenda, sent it to the Senate. It got passed.
All right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, objectively the case.
Right? Chuck Schumer not only said that in Anderson Cooper, he also told the Washington Post, what happened in 2009 and 10 is we tried to work with Republicans. The package ended up being much too small. The recession lasted for 5 years. People got sour. We lost the election. And he basically said, we're not doing that again.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And Democrats finally abandoned the policy of starving America's poorest children just to punish their jobless parents.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And again, homage to Joan McCarter. I used the deficit peacock picture. It's a term as far as I know she invented. The Democrats' fiscal philosophy is now apparently there's nothing to fear but fear of deficits itself.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, the economy's going to overheat, this, that, everything else. Yeah, sit on it.
That's a throwback.
We'll worry about it when we get our feet back under ourselves.
Okay.
You guys have used that excuse to not get anything done forever, except when you wanted to do it, in which case you said, forget it, we'll just give money to the richest 1%. So, no, that's not flying.
Be damned. Okay. Good.
That the Biden presidency has already exceeded many progressives' low expectations isn't cause for contentment. I don't know anybody sitting around saying, oh, I'm totally content with how things are right now. It's grounds for progressives to raise their expectations. That sounds like a slate pitch. Why are people so contented now? It's grounds for progressives to raise their expectations. Some things can fundamentally change. If that's the case, let's see what we can do about voting rights, because that's the big next thing.
That does come next. True. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So when they
Yeah,
go
I
on
hope
right-wing
so.
fringe media and podcasts, says Ron Filipkowski, that's when they say the quiet parts out loud. Here is former U.S. Senate Delaware candidate, speaking of Delaware, Lauren
Are we?
Witzke. To
Okay.
be honest, not a name. She ran against Chris Coons, talking about
Yeah.
voter suppression laws in Georgia. And among the quotes she has is, "We're doing this because it'll cut Stacey Abrams off at the knees. All I care about is winning." That's the quote.
Uh-huh. Nice. Well,
Right? We're not doing it. We're doing this for election integrity because really what it'll do is it'll make sure we win. So
yes,
that's
that's what
the
they mean
integrity
by
of the election right there.
right. I don't know what to tell you. They keep saying it, and phew. Okay,
I'm
they
sure.
were
I'm sure
recording you, right?
it'll come up in the court cases. So
It
at least there's
has
that.
over and over. I mean, that's how. It wasn't that long ago that we were in court over North Carolina's redistricting, and they had
In
all
Pennsylvania, the
those
guy in
notes.
Pennsylvania said that about we
You're
did
right,
this with
right.
voter ID so that Mitt Romney could win the state.
Yeah, and yeah,
I mean, they keep saying it out loud, and so it's time to take them seriously. And
guess
so
so.
that's why it's HR 1,
right.
the Voting Integrity Act, which the Bulwark had an interesting point-counterpoint where actual policy is being discussed, where they had somebody come in and say, look, this is why we did this. All these things are in the bill. It's good. And Charlie Sykes and some of the conservatives said, no, it's actually bad because this, and this. And then J.B. Last said, okay, well, here are the good parts. Here are the bad parts. Here are how we can fix it. It was an actual policy discussion with conservatives, which was really kind of interesting because that's not what happens now. Now is like Trump loyalty. And if you are a real Republican, you'll send all your money to me, Donald Trump, and not the Republican Party, because that's how you prove you're not a rhino.
Right. He is telling them that now, and
because I got a lot of legal bills to pay off.
Right.
And all you rubes, all you voters out there really need to pay attention. Now, here's a piece I didn't know, or if I knew, I had forgotten about it. You know this, but I didn't know this. Okay, this is a piece from David Litt, writing in The Atlantic.
You didn't tell me
about
this.
A historical thing, which in retrospect seems like a hysterical thing.
Okay.
The House used to have a filibuster. And when legislators got rid of it, the result was a more democratic, productive institution. We already got rid of the filibuster once before, he writes.
All right. Well,
I didn't know that. The House had a filibuster.
We didn't do it under Senate rules. But okay, I got you. It wasn't in the Senate.
It's hardly surprising a growing number of Democratic politicians now want to end the legislative filibuster entirely, or that McConnell and his fellow Republicans are rallying to its defense. What's surprising, however, is how few Americans know we eliminated it before 130 years ago, after a debate that makes today seem placid by comparison. Republican lawmakers got rid of the filibuster not in the Senate, but in the House. Okay. The demise of the House filibuster ought to be better remembered, not just because it's one of the most dramatic episodes in American political history. Well, it happened more than 15 minutes ago, and it didn't involve the Royals, so we didn't cover it.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Well, no wonder.
The procedural battle that took place more than a century ago holds an important lesson. Ending the filibuster may be messy, but it won't destroy a legislative body.
They're turning the House into the House.
Yeah.
I guess.
Like the Senate filibuster, which was created when then Vice President Aaron Burr accidentally removed a rule permitting a majority of the chamber to force a vote on a bill, the House filibuster was at heart a procedural loophole. In this case, the trick involved the way the lawmakers took attendance. According to the lower chamber's original rules, lawmakers who voted yes or no on a piece of legislation were marked present, but those that did not vote at all were marked absent, even if they were standing there.
Okay.
This mattered because, like most lawmaking bodies, the House requires a quorum. Without a majority of lawmakers present, the chamber grinds to a halt. So if the majority party was able to summon a sufficient number of its own members, it could pass bills as pleased. But in the pre-aviation age, when lawmakers were frequently days or weeks travel away, gathering a quorum was hard. So in many cases, members of the minority party could decline to vote, be marked absent, denying the majority a quorum despite being there. Just as in the Senate presently, a minority of the House could kill a popular bill by denying it an up or down vote.
I see.
I didn't know this.
Okay. Yeah. This is mostly news. Sure, yeah. Let's keep
Political
going.
scientists today call this procedural trick the disappearing quorum. But in the early 1800s, Americans referred to it with a word derived from the filibustier and filibusteros, who pirated the sea on behalf of France and Spain. They called the laying tacket or hijacking of the legislator a filibuster.
Huh. All right. I didn't know they actually
House
called it that.
filibuster, which began when the House itself did, lasted roughly a century. Then in the 1888 election, Republicans won control of the White House, the Senate, and the House for the first time in 2 decades. And in theory, the GOP could finally pass its agenda. But because its majority in the lower chamber was extremely small, just 3 votes, sounds familiar, huh?
Yeah.
Democrats could deny a quorum nearly any time they chose. And at the turn of the 20th century, partisan polarization was almost as bad as it is today, which means the assumption back then was the same as now. The minority party would use the filibuster to derail the majority's legislative agenda. What nobody anticipated was a legislature as devoted to getting rid of the filibuster as Speaker Thomas Brackett Reed.
Everyone really deep down knew Thomas Brackett Reed was coming, but okay.
A 6'3", 300-pound Civil War veteran who favored walrus mustaches and all-black attire. Reed first made his name in Congress as a spouter of witty one-liners during debates, but his real genius lay in understanding the House's rules. We appreciate that on this show.
Yeah. This is some old
Right?
rules.
Somebody who knows the rules.
Too.
Although Reed cherished the lower chamber as an institution, he became convinced that if a minority of lawmakers could kill a bill without allowing a vote on it, the House would be a tyranny. He grew confident that because the House rewrites its rules from scratch for every new legislative session,
Right.
important there, I knew that because you taught me, he could eliminate the filibuster with a single bold stroke. Perhaps more important, he decided that ending the filibuster was worth risking his career.
Okay.
I made up my mind, he said later, that if political life consisted of sitting helplessly in the speaker's chair and seeing the majority helpless to pass legislation, I had enough and was ready to step down and out. So at the start of the 51st Congress, Reed did something radical. He took attendance after introducing a controversial bill that he knew would be filibustered.
Yeah.
Reed began a roll call of yes and nays in alphabetical order, starting with Texas's Joseph Abbott and ending with Ohio's Samuel Yoder. This would have been unremarkable except for one change to procedure. If a lawmaker was physically inside the chamber, Reed marked him as present, whether he voted or not.
Yeah. You could just change your mind.
Yeah, Reed's gambit was a leap into the unknown. The disappearing quorum had always been a feature. When Democrats realized what he was attempting, they rushed to object. I deny your right, Mr. Speaker, to count me as present, said somebody while he was there.
I'm sorry. I actually did hear what you said just then, and that means you're present because you're not on a cell phone or via Zoom. It's 1888.
Chair is making a statement of fact that the gentleman is present, replied Reed. Do you deny it?
Nice.
One reason Reed remained calm throughout the exchange was he knew he was on firm procedural ground. His critics could condemn him, but they lacked the parliamentary power to stop him.
Right.
Democrats soon figured this out as well. With the disappearing quorum suddenly unavailable to the minority party, its desperate members tried denying a quorum the old-fashioned way by fleeing the House floor en masse. One lawmaker, Constantine Kilgore of Texas, kicked down a door and escaped, but the rest of his Democratic colleagues were blocked by locked exits or found hiding under their desks. After order was restored in the chamber, debate resumed.
The room's not that big. Yeah. All right.
If you're hiding under the desk, they could probably still find you. I'm thinking.
Right. Have you checked under his desk? Oh, yeah, look at that. I just didn't think he was that dumb.
What about behind that piece of paper over there?
He's hiding behind his cane. You're 300 pounds, sir. All right.
The furious denunciations that followed make today's filibuster debate look measured. One member called Reed's roll call an act as violent as was ever witnessed in any parliament, but after 4 days, Democrats had no choice but to move on.
Really? Now, this is not that long after the caning of Charles Sumner, but it did happen on the other side of the parliament, I guess, and so maybe they didn't witness that. They just beat a guy half to death, but taking attendance and marking me down as present because I am present. What violence. All right.
So the battle was over after 4 days. Reed won, and that's why the House doesn't have a filibuster. And who knew that story? I didn't know that story.
No, I didn't know that story
either. I
either.
to read, but I didn't know the story. This is great.
Okay. Yeah, this is a pretty good one. But I knew about the derivation of the name filibuster. We learned about that the other day. I mean, I had heard before that it came from like pirates and piracy, but I read a whole interesting article on I guess probably Friday. Seems like a Friday article about with the original use of the word filibuster having to do with piracy or just sort of private military ventures from very often in this case launched from American soil onto foreign countries without the without the backing of the American government or armed forces. But, yeah, you learn something new about this stupid thing every day. And this
stupid
is a good
thing
one.
being the Congress.
Yeah, right. And then their little rules, the filibuster. That's the one we're talking about. But what a strange
And the
thing.
rules.
And it's amazing that they were so caught by surprise, but I guess you get sort of caught up in, well, it's always been this way. This is the procedure we've always used. But the idea that for almost 100 years, members of Congress are convinced that if I just don't say anything, they'll mark me as not here. Of course that's going to be changed. And here...
I'm not here, sir. I declare I'm not here.
Yeah.
Ruling from the chair is you are.
And
Now,
that's
you wanna
that.
overturn my ruling? Go ahead.
Right,
I got
and
the
that's
vote.
and he just basically pulls a great early nuclear option there. They didn't know anything about nuclear anything then, of course, but Reid just saying, well, I say I'm going to count it this way, and I do happen to have a majority here today. You want to vote on whether or not I'm allowed to count you present if you're present? Fine. I've already counted the people who are here. I see I will win.
Yes, exactly.
So great. Yeah.
So
Hiding under the
David Litt,
desk.
who's the former
Amazing.
speechwriter for President Obama, ends this piece by saying, perhaps this is the most important lesson 130-year-old parliamentary battle holds for lawmakers in 2021. If we end the Senate filibuster, our descendants are unlikely to find themselves longing for its return. If anything, they'll be surprised that such a bizarre and anti-democratic process was allowed to hold back progress for so long, especially if you remind them that filibuster was used basically to block voting rights for minorities.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point.
Even without that, this whole story about what happened in the House is just fascinating. Well, you can't change things. Well, why?
Right.
Because it's always been this way. Well,
Right.
what if we change it for the better? Well, that can't happen because reasons.
Yeah, and predictable
Mostly
reactions.
because it'll be
too.
popular and you'll win, so we can't have it.
And standing there saying this is the most violent thing, the most whatever it was, act of violence in a parliament, when A, clearly it wasn't, and B, no one remembers. Don't worry about it.
So here's an interesting piece of gossip
How
to go
interesting.
along with that I just
All right.
thought was interesting. That'll be the last thing I do today. If it's the last thing I do today, I'm going to tell you this piece of gossip.
Yes, and I'll listen.
Senator Merkley has
I know
talked
the
to
guy.
all 49 other Senate Democrats about his filibuster reform proposals, including Joe Manchin.
Okay.
Okay, and Merkley says there's a tremendous sense in the caucus that Mitch McConnell has profoundly abused the 60-vote motion to close debate. We talked about different ways we could change that on the show the other day, including Norm Ornstein's proposals. But Burgess Everett is reporting, and this is the interesting piece. Senator John Cornyn fears that Sinema and Manchin can't be relied upon to preserve the filibuster.
Okay.
Not holding my breath, they're going to save us or the Senate. There's going to be an incredible amount of pressure on them. That's true, especially when it comes to voting rights.
Yes.
Maybe we should send them this article about the House.
Yeah, right. We'll share this with them. Where did you see these comments about them being unreliable in terms of Republicans?
It's a story from Politico that Burgess Everett is passing along. Here are the exact
Burgess,
tweets
calm down.
from whence that.
Okay, I'll track it down then from there. That is a good start for us. Yeah, they aren't to be
A
relied
reminder
on.
to our
for
listeners
that.
at home, it's Wednesday, that's garbage day, so you'll hear Abby in the background saying hi. Unlike Major, she doesn't nip people.
Right, I know.
By the way, that's a huge story, you know.
That's
Major,
one of-
the dog at the White House, nipped one of the Secret Service people but didn't break skin. And all last night was breaking injury at White House due to presidential dogs. And then you read the story and said, well, what happened? Nothing.
That's that's the big new thing. We were just reading the polling results about how many Republicans have heard about important stuff versus unimportant stuff. It's up there with the Dr. Seuss. It's a Dr. Seuss level emergency.
But you know what that means? It means boring Joe Biden's getting the job done.
Right.
It's like nothing else to talk
outsourcing the
about.
biting.
I can't talk about what he's actually doing. It's popular, so I'll do this.
Talk about what his dogs are doing instead. And now if Joe starts biting the Secret Service agents,
Or Joe starts biting his dogs. That's news.
Well, right. That's the very definition of news. That's true. Can't be sure whether it would absolutely make headlines if he bit Secret Service agents. It's part of the job. It's dangerous work. But bite a dog, that's traditionally news. So,
Interestingly, somebody noted on Twitter here, a fellow named Wild Blogger,
oh,
that Sinema and Manchin are the Susan Collins and Mitt Romney of the left. Sometimes,
okay.
they vote with us, but they're usually in the Democrats' camp, despite flirting with breaking.
Okay. Yeah, I see the comparison. I don't know if I don't know if I'll
They
go
get a
along
lot
with
of
it, but
they get a lot of press for being independent minded and this, that, and anything else. But when push comes to shove, they vote with us.
okay. I will. It's a facile comparison, but the best kind for a morning, really. Gives you all day.
Well, don't forget these
investigate.
folks are from purple red states.
Ah.
Purple state in Sinema's case, and pretty red in Manchin's
Right.
situation.
Including the
Manchin's
rivers.
whole thing, like Susan Collins when she got reelected, despite everybody thinking that a place like Maine could never elect her after everything that happened. You establish your own brand, and you can get reelected.
Yeah.
And Manchin's brand is being independent. So, he's got to have the shtick, the show, the play acting, the cosplay. It's part of what he does.
Yeah.
And he and Sinema are committed to making sure the minority is represented. If the minority overplays their hand, there's every reason to think that Manchin will say, I totally support the filibuster, except I need some changes to it. And by the way, not when it comes to voting rights.
Yeah.
We made an
I guess
exception, Harry Reid did, for circuit courts? Was it when he did it?
Yes.
And then Mitch McConnell said, well, we have an exception for the Supreme Court. And Joe Manchin can say, I firmly believe in the filibuster forever, but, I have an exception for voting rights.
I guess you could say that. I mean, that there's
no reason why he can't.
No, there's no reason
There's
why
no
he
rule.
should. But there you go. Okay.
Right? Consistency is the hobgoblins of little moldy minds.
Yeah. Okay. By the way,
People who teach minds to mold them so that they can make them moldy. There's no reason why it can't be.
that's right. You can teach anything you want, I suppose. Whether the lesson is absorbed is another thing. Okay. Very, very interesting. I had, I hadn't really thought about the possibility of declaring the difference to be, well, this is a bill about voting rights or civil rights. It doesn't make a great deal of sense, but in no less sense than saying, for instance, the no filibusters permitted or 50 majority cloture on everything, every executive and judicial nomination except for the Supreme Court. That doesn't make any sense either, but they did it, so now you know. There's
But
a precedent for doing things
Manchin
that don't
doesn't
make
even
sense.
have to be in the chair to say, look,
No.
I happen to feel strongly that this deserves a carve-out. And you can say that
No, he doesn't have to
it
be
shouldn't,
in the chair.
and I have the votes, and so that's the end of the discussion.
If you he doesn't have to be in a chair. But if someone who's in the chair says it, will he agree? If he does, then fine. I mean, they'll ask him ahead of time. But no, he doesn't have to take the chair or anything like it. He doesn't have to say anything publicly at all. He just has to vote.
It just has to be one of the 50 votes and then get Harris to agree.
All right. Yeah. And Sinema, who
and the only
I don't know how to
thing
figure her out,
that's required here, it's obligatory, is that you have to say, look, I'm doing this in sadness, not anger.
True. Right.
I mean, that's the only obligatory thing. I wanted to do it the other way, and these guys wouldn't cooperate.
Yeah. Is there an opportunity to hide under a desk in this at all? If I would like to see that done.
if the Republicans want to hide under their desks,
yeah,
apparently there is a historical precedent for it. It
right,
doesn't work,
in the House,
but it's been done, apparently.
Sure, right. And
we're not even talking about the 1960s duck and cover stuff.
No, or even about earlier this year during the insurrection. But wow, all right. Well, that was a hell of a story. I'm going to think a little bit about that, and I've been pondering that in the last couple of days because I've been having trouble setting up in my mind the parliamentary situation where a small change to the way we say count votes on cloture votes makes logical sense for the situation you find yourself in. I know where I'd like to end up, but it's hard to put yourself in that position such that a ruling makes direct sense for what's happening on the floor. But I guess that's one way of doing it, and just say, well, the chair just says that cloture is 50 on a critical issue like voting rights or when constitutional rights are at stake. Now, you could just end up, the problem is you can end up saying that about just about any bill, but then, what? You could always do that. Yeah. And we keep forgetting that power has always been in their hands on both sides, in the House and the Senate, as this other story just illustrates. You don't have to count votes this stupid way. You can count them a very obvious, normal way instead. If you've got the votes to uphold the ruling of the chair, it's done. So
right.
Right.
This is a discussion that you hear all the time, and sometimes you just step back and scratch your head. Well, the Democrats aren't exercising their power the way they should. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, then we will. Yes, but you're not doing it the right way. What does that mean?
Right. Well, we have heard that a lot about protests about civil rights. Well, taking a knee during the national anthem, that's the wrong way. All right. Sacking the Capitol, that's the right way, apparently.
Well, that's the wrong
amazing.
way.
Well,
so,
I think so. But...
It's a discussion, and I just think that it just opens a lot of doors.
Right. Okay, well... Let's keep doing that, and
I'll never think about the House the same way again after reading that article.
No, well, good. That's that really was a good find. Interesting. I don't that one doesn't get discussed a lot because it's not endless debate. But it is just as dumb.
It's also not well known.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know it.
No,
and but they bring up some really important points. One of which you have made, and I have remembered. So it struck me when I read it, and I said, "Oh, adults learn by repetition. I've heard this before. I think I can remember this." The House starts their new rules every single session.
Right.
The Senate is a continuous body, but the House isn't.
So they say. Right. So that certainly made it a lot easier. It took a lot of thinking and contortion and squinting at the rules just right to find the same thing in the Senate. But all right. Well, thank you. And we'll catch up with you some more tomorrow. Find us another story like that. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Speaking of weird and stupid parliamentary procedure, I guess Marjorie Taylor Greene is up to her one trick again over on the House side, wherein she has called for another of her random motions to adjourn rather than get started on debate on the Senate version of the COVID relief bill. And I think... I don't know if the vote is still ongoing or whatever, but it's another one which, obviously she ends up losing this vote and it does nothing. Apparently, the big upshot of it is that it forces final passage of the COVID relief bill closer to 2 p.m. rather than, I guess, probably the 1 p.m. Passage that they were anticipating, because it'll cost the House 45 minutes to an hour to vote to reject her motion to adjourn. At some point, it will be interesting to see whether, which happens first, a larger majority of the Republican conference voting against her motions to adjourn, or the chair getting fed up, or I guess we should say Democratic leadership getting fed up with it and speaking to the parliamentarian and looking to instruct the chair at some point to either refuse to recognize Greene for the purpose of offering a motion to adjourn, or to rule the motion dilatory and therefore out of order, which are things you can do if you're willing to back it up with the votes. We haven't really gotten to that point yet, and it might be the case that the better way of treating things is to simply say, if Republicans would like to put their big rising star on the floor every day to waste everybody's time and make their Republican colleagues angry at them, at the cost of 45 minutes, we're willing to let you continue to do that for some period of time. So it might be something that they let them do. All right, let's see. So anyway, just letting you know that that's still ongoing. The ye old party of ideas over there, the Republicans, offering the same motion, the same pointless motion to adjourn every day. All right, let's see. Greg has sent me some pictures. I was saying during the break on his way out, I'm going to go and get some pictures of the old House chamber somewhere and take a look, because as Greg was telling the story of Thomas Reed and the House filibuster, which granted, I guess it carried the same name, but wasn't the same sort of procedural loophole, but loophole nonetheless. And it was eliminated in much the same way. What would have been the House version of the nuclear option, but the mention of people hiding under their desks, which is really amazing. And of course, for the most part, there are no desks in the House chamber anymore. So presumably that is a tactic that doesn't avail you of much these days. There are some places where there are tables, and I suppose you could hide under a table, but they're up at the front and they're easy to look under. But yeah, like now, if you were ducking down on the floor like that, saying, I'm hiding under my desk, well, this is pretty ineffective because you are, not under anything. It's kind of unhelpful. But Greg has sent me these pictures here. Maybe we can find a way to share some of them with you, but I'll take a look at this. Yeah, there doesn't look like there's much in the way of desks in the old chamber either, but it's hard to tell what's going on behind these bars. Let's see. And this one I've seen before too, although that looks like the old Senate chamber, actually. But I'm not positive that it isn't actually the House chamber because I don't know, because reasons. They just decorated them similarly. Have you ever toured the Capitol? Downstairs, if you're in the old Senate chamber, one of the weirdest features, I think, of the old Senate chamber is this, I don't know what you would call it, but there's this, over the president's, the presiding officer's chair, there was this weird sort of like canopy of sorts. It's a permanent structure, but it's draped, as though as though you could pull down the curtains and hide the president of the Senate. And I guess the House chamber had one too. I guess that was the style at the time. So it reminds me very much of the old Senate chamber. But I also think this might be the House chamber because the room itself is like a half circle. And again, if you've taken the tours of the Capitol before, there's when you're in the rotunda area, they described to you that this was where the old House chamber was. So that would account for that rounded look here. This was before they built the two wings onto the Capitol and the new chambers there. So yeah, you may recall this, right? If you were on one of the Capitol tours, they would probably have taken you to the spot. There's a little brass plaque where John Quincy Adams had his desk. Did you ever hear this story? Have you ever had a chance to take a tour of the Capitol and had a good guide show you where John Quincy Adams had his desk? And of course, he was in the House. He was rather elderly at the time, and the story goes that people used to think he was napping at his desk, which is also a thing you could hide under if you're having a filibuster fight. So that would be a lot harder to do without desks now, just napping without a table in front of you. He used to be seen there quite often, but apparently the story was that the acoustics of the chamber, because it was sort of a semicircle, the acoustics of the chamber were such that at certain spots you could hear conversations taking place on the other side of the aisle because the sound was bouncing off of the domed roof, and that the two foci, how do you pronounce that, of a oblong shape, an oval, right? The sound apparently bounced between these two spots. So the opposition party gathered at one point in the middle of the other side of the aisle and had their conversations. But if he put his head on the desk, the rumor was that he could hear those conversations bouncing off of the domed roof. Very interesting. I think he was actually probably just was napping. I don't know if it really works that way. No one has ever been able to demonstrate that on a tour. But They may have tried. I don't know. If you've had a Capitol tour experience that was similar, let me know. And if you've never heard of such a thing, I guess you might as well just speak up about that too. All right. Well, that's not news. That's history, though. And now we can move on to some of the other stories that I had put aside. Greg did us a great favor in bringing that Atlantic piece to our attention. Well, both of the Atlantic pieces. One about getting rid of the filibuster, and the other, I'm sorry, not the Atlantic, but the New York piece by Eric Levitz recounting what a big effing deal the COVID relief bill is. I feel like, although we highlighted it, we discussed the contents of the bill, Joan went over in some detail exactly why it was such a big effing deal. But yeah, laying it all out there, and I feel like I need to reiterate the number of articles that I've seen out there saying, yeah, great as COVID relief goes, for sure, but this is a fundamental change in the way we address economic inequality and insecurity in this country, and you might not have guessed that that would be done in the middle of this the COVID relief bill, but well done and well thought through to use it as a vehicle for this kind of big stuff. All right, let's see. Before we dive into what's in pocket, I should take note of this question from our friend Mighty OCD asking whether Joan was going to be on today. That, of course, was Tuesday, Joan's Day. But the question specifically was whether she was going to be on because he wanted to know what was going on with the Congressional Review Act, the CRA. Is time running out? And he got an answer. Joan isn't going to be on today. That's the answer. But the more substantive answer was that she shared a good explainer on the Congressional Review Act and what was going on with that deadline. To catch you up on it in short order, if you haven't been thinking about this or don't really realize what's going on or know about the CRA, Congressional Review Act, actually a Gingrich-era Republican reform in which they granted themselves the opportunity to review all executive actions, executive orders, and regulatory changes implemented by executive order within 60 days of the issuance again, I guess I should say, the order or the regulatory work or executive orders. I think, executive orders might not be subject to that now that I think about it, but we'll read through the explainer and find out. Not my area of expertise, but I remember this much. Within 60 days of the issuance of these regulatory orders, at the very least, Congress had the opportunity to affirmatively reject them. And there are doubtless several lingering from the last days of the Trump administration, which should be subject to that kind of review. So here's the rundown. It is a piece put together by Daniel Perez at the GW Regulatory Studies Center. I'm not even certain whose publication it is that I'm looking at here, but GWU, George Washington University, Regulatory Studies Center's Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. I guess that's just their regular undergraduate liberal arts school at the greater GWU. But anyway, that's not the important part. The important part is here. Upcoming CRA deadline has implications for regulatory oversight by Congress. And let's take a look at what they've got there. And it's not that lengthy, and it's a little wonky and a little chart heavy, so you should probably see it for yourself. But in case you, like the mighty OCD, were wondering, in 2017, the 115th Congress made historic use of the Congressional Review Act, previously described as an arcane or obscure tool, to eliminate 15 rules issued under the Obama administration. Depending on the outcome of the presidential election next fall, we already know the outcome now because this was written in December of 2019, but we now have the answer. Depending on the outcome, Biden wins. We may see the CRA used again. Or actually, I mean, that was the outcome of the election. But the part of the election outcome that matters for the use of the CRA, of course, would be control of Congress. And we have the answer on that, too. Although the 117th Congress won't convene until January 3rd, 2021, that's done, and it won't be overrun by rioters until January 6th, 2021. It's a remarkable prediction he's made in this piece. He is not. A looming deadline will affect what regulations they could eliminate using the expedited procedures. This, no doubt, is come to mind for all of us because we're at about the 50-day point in the Biden administration. And while we're going gangbusters, for instance, on delivering on how many vaccines were promised by Biden by the end of his first 100 days, that we're doing great with. But yeah, if you only have 60 days to act and 50 have elapsed, what does it mean? So let's see. This was a prediction, again, written in December of 2019, that although the new Congress doesn't convene until January 3rd, a looming deadline will affect what regulations they could eliminate using expedited procedures. According to the recently released 2020 House calendar, any rules issued after May 19th, 2020 may be subject to review by the 117th Congress. If Trump is reelected, this may not matter, he hasn't been, since he could veto any disapprovals sent to his desk, yet statements by Trump administration officials suggest they are aware of the upcoming deadline and acting to finalize high-priority rules before the window opens. Rules issued within the window could face greater risk of being overturned, particularly under the scrutiny of a different group of political principles, depending on the outcome of the elections. However, agencies will have to weigh the benefit of rushing to publish their rules, that is, to publish them. The faster the Trump administration published their rules back then, the less likely they would still be within the CRA window when Democrats come to power, should they win the elections, and they did. Anyway, so they wanted to weigh the benefit of rushing to publish their rules against the risk of shortchanging the quality of their supporting analyses. Well, you know how they're going to come out on that balancing act. They'll obviously vote to rush them through. They don't care about the quality of the supporting analysis. But just as far as a quick review on CRA, and somewhere in pocket, and I'll really have to scroll for it, and maybe I'll take a look after the show and see if I can find it. I have some writing from earlier in the early Biden term about which of the more egregious Trump era regulations fit within the window and could still be questioned and challenged at some point. It's just true, big opportunity there, but this hasn't been a huge priority for this Congress. The bigger priority, of course, being one, putting down an insurrection, two, COVID relief, three, H.R. 1, voting rights, etc. And, of course, the CRA isn't the only way to be rid of obnoxious Trump-era regulations. The new leadership of these departments can rewrite and reissue different regulations that rescind the old ones. There's that too. It's just a question of the Congress can step in and undo these things if there's opposition to undoing them at the executive branch level. But now there isn't. But anyway, in terms of review of what is the Congressional Review Act? A short 2-paragraph explainer here. Congress enacted the CRA on March 29th, 1996 to enhance congressional oversight of federal agency rulemaking. The law requires agencies to submit their rules to Congress before they can take effect. It also provides Congress with a mechanism for disapproving, i.e. eliminating, final rules issued by federal agencies. Only a simple majority vote is required in both houses to pass a disapproval. Additional fast-track procedures such as disallowing amendments and limiting floor debate to 10 hours also prevent such resolutions from being filibustered in the Senate. So, if nothing else, it's another instance of statutory elimination of the possibility of filibuster. So, chalk that one up and It's not just the budget and reconciliation that prohibit the use of the filibuster. The Congressional Review Act does the same, and perhaps we ought to be casting an eye in that direction and writing more exceptions. And maybe that could be it. Maybe a bill goes through. It won't happen first because we're already on to debating the voting rights thing. But if for some reason it fails to get through, maybe that's something to think about. Putting through one mechanism or another. I mean, how you get the new rule, the statutory rule, through, I don't know. But I suppose you got to be open to the possibility of forcing it through reconciliation or some other method. Anyway, back to the explainer. Perhaps most interestingly, the CRA contains a look-back provision allowing a subsequent session of Congress to disapprove any rules issued by agencies during the final 60 working days of the previous Congress. Previous Congress rather than administration. So 60 days from... When was 60 days from January 3rd? I would think that we'd gotten past there. I thought it might be 60 days of the previous presidential administration. But okay, this has historically been most relevant in the period immediately following presidential and congressional elections, where a new group of political principals can exercise this authority over rules issued under a different regime, i.e. a group with differing policy priorities. For example, for a rule issued in September 2020, the 116th Congress would have its usual 60-day window of review, but if the rule was issued during the last 60 legislative days that the House was in session, the look-back provision in the CRA would generate an additional full period in which the 117th Congress could review the rule. A little bit confusing, but I think we get it. What do we know about the 60-day look-back window? Due to the way working days in Congress are counted in the House and Senate, don't forget that they count their days weird, right? The House schedule has, to date, determined the window for the look-back period. According to the recently released 2020 House calendar, this window would open on May 20th, 2020. All agency regulations issued on or after that date would be subject to CRA oversight by the 117th Congress. Okay. That's the current Congress. So if that didn't change, any agency regulations issued after May 20th, 2020, subject to, I guess, 60 days, whatever the day may mean, worth of review period in the new Congress. This date is likely to change, however. I guess it may have, but I don't know whether it did or not. The date is likely to change because the House has historically convened more legislative days toward the end of each calendar year than what is presented on the tentative floor schedule. For instance, since 2011, using the House calendar released in December to predict the start of the look-back window results in estimates that are an average of 45 calendar days earlier than the actual start date. That's just, again, because the House and Senate maintain weird rules about when a new legislative day starts, in particular in the Senate. And that we occasionally have to remind you that legislative day is not the same thing as calendar days, the way normal people would count these things. Just as being present but not voting used to count as being absent. It's just one of those weird things. So, this suggests that the look-back period is more likely to begin sometime in July or even August of 2020. But it will not be possible to definitively identify the start date until the 116th Congress adjourns for the last time. Regardless, the incoming Congress will have a 60-day window to review those rules under the CRA beginning on its 15th working day. In short, the 117th Congress, and possibly a new president, will have several months to exercise fast-track oversight, approximately 6 months of regulations issued by the Trump administration. Altogether, this amounts to almost a full year of jeopardy for agency rules spanning 2 Congresses. That is pretty amazing. Then a very wonky chart on the frequency of CRA carryover window openings since 1996 by month. I can't even explain to you exactly what that is about. The implications for agency rulemaking in the coming months Statements by Trump administration officials suggest they are aware that issuing regulations before the window opens on the CRA look-back period would protect these rules from expedited disapproval by the next Congress. In the absence of disapproval under the CRA, modifying regulations instead requires adherence to the more complex and time-consuming rulemaking process. A look at the recently released Unified Agenda indicates that agencies still have substantive regulatory priorities they plan to finalize within the next 12 months, including 119 economically significant actions. That's a term of art, and what it's about, well, you can click through and read about what a economically significant action means and why it's interesting as a designation. However, agencies will have to weigh the benefits of rushing to beat the CRA deadline against the potential risk of publishing rules supported by less robust analysis. For instance, my colleagues at the GW Regulatory Studies Center found that the better economic analysis could help regulations survive challenges in court. Traditionally, rules issued towards the end of presidential administrations are often supported by lower quality analysis. I guess as a result of this phenomenon, regulators will have to carefully consider this trade-off in any decision to rush to beat the clock, particularly given agencies' numerous unsuccessful outcomes in court for regulatory actions issued under the Trump administration. Wow. Very wonky, but I guess an easy way of summarizing that last bit is you remember, perhaps you followed along on Twitter, my lengthy, an ongoing Twitter thread taking the Trump administration to task for their many failures in court and elsewhere. The old, what was it? You really know how to get things done or whatever. You're really good at getting stuff done or whatever. And then the hashtag dotard. But they lost, I think, just record-breaking numbers of court cases throughout the Trump administration, almost always because of sloppy analysis that sometimes was just non-existent right from the beginning. So it wouldn't surprise me if they also blew it in the CRA window as well. So that doesn't actually answer the question in terms of when does the CRA window close. We could probably look it up from there. But now you've got, I think, the building blocks of the ability to go and do your own research on that and take a look for the CRA look back window and find out when that's going to close, and perhaps do a little bit of Googling to see whether there's any activity in the House side on bringing any actions. Again, even if they don't, it's understandable because their priorities lie elsewhere at the moment. That would be pretty time consuming. Way of spending the first couple weeks of the new Congress and the new administration, and I think they're making the most of it by concentrating their fire elsewhere. And then there's always just the regular regulatory agency rulemaking process. Cumbersome though it is, it's one thing for a cumbersome process to try to get the Trump administration to navigate it, but for the Biden administration, filled as it is by old hands very often from the Obama administration and people who understand the rulemaking process and care about doing it right, it's not nearly the same sort of burden for them that it was for the Trump people. So even if there's not a lot of CRA activity, I wouldn't be terribly worried about that. Okay, time to move on and time to set ourselves up for the next break. There's an awful lot still out there and worthy of note. Let's see. I found this. Well, let's see. There's a bunch of things that I found very interesting. Let's throw this one in there because I think we can cram it in before we actually jump out of here. Just it only takes a minute or so to pat myself on the back for this one. I have the report here from The Hill, which comes under the headline, Supreme Court rejects final Trump bid to nullify 2020 election results. The exciting news of the Supreme Court denying an appeal from the circuit courts, which upheld the federal district court rulings in the Wisconsin election cases. Bottom line here is this one. This is the case where the Trump campaign alleged that Wisconsin had somehow violated its own election laws by agreeing to, or did not agreeing in the Wisconsin legislature to simply reassign the Electoral College voters there, and that this was somehow in their power because they had the power to determine the manner of holding elections. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning. I have good news to report. Many more listeners like you are making critical contributions that keep our show on the air. Makes good sense, of course, and patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple. Now you can make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for helping keep you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all of your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back out to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Networks Radio. I didn't get to cram it all in there, and I left you hanging for a moment. I guess I really should say the long story, very short on this, is I was right and they were wrong, which is not difficult. It was probably not a difficult prediction to offer back then. But let me read from the Hill that'll give some context and some structure to the thoughts here. John Cruzel's coverage of the issue here. The Supreme Court on Monday denied a bid by former President Trump to nullify his electoral loss in Wisconsin, rejecting the former president's final pending appeal over the results of the 2020 election. In an unsigned order without noted dissent, the justices declined to take up Trump's lawsuit alleging Wisconsin election officials violated the Constitution by expanding absentee voting amid the global coronavirus pandemic. The justices' move brought an end to Trump's scattershot and ineffective legal campaign to overturn President Biden's victory, and added to the abysmal post-election court record of Trump and his allies, which included more than 60 losses and just one narrow win. Trump sued in Wisconsin more than a month after Biden won the state by just over 20,000 votes. His lawsuit claimed that the policies put in place by the Wisconsin Election Commission to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus, like establishing absentee ballot drop boxes, etc., illegally usurped the state legislature's role and sole power over election rules. You remember that the basis of the suit was the constitutional language in where? Article 2, Section what? Let's see, where are they? Probably one or two, in which they describe how, I guess Section 1, describe how states will choose their electors for the Electoral College. And what was it? Where's the actual language of it? But it was pretty simple, and it was that the state legislatures have the right to choose the manner in which their electors will be selected, and that the real interpretation, most proper interpretation of what that meant was that it's up to the state legislature to decide, will we appoint our electors, or will we hold a popular vote in the state, and the winner of the popular vote in the state shall be awarded all of the state's electors, or some of the state's electors, might be breaking them down as some other states do by congressional district or whatever. But that's all that's really meant by the manner of choosing your electors. Will you do it by election? Will you do it by appointment? Will you do it by coin toss? Will you do it by, rummy cube tournament. I got no idea. You pick any method you want, but that's all that means. The Trump suit alleged that having that the rules by which ballots are cast, collected, and counted are also the sole province of the state legislature, and that's just not true. That's just not the way that things have been interpreted since then. The manner of choosing the electors is popular election, and the methods by which the votes are cast, collected, and counted has nothing to do with the selection of the manner. The manner has been chosen. It is an election, and that's all there is to it. If you wanted to change from an election to an appointment, or from an election to some other method, drawing lots, etc., that would be up to the legislature, and the legislature would have to do it. The question of what day should we have the deadline for counties to report their final totals, or how many boxes should we put the ballots into? That's not supposed to be a question of constitutional import every single time a state wants to change its methods rather than its manner. And I thought that was pretty obvious. And I guess so did the judge in the federal district court where the case was brought. But I guess it caught not everybody, probably not even a majority, but it caught a lot of people by surprise, or some people were at least surprised that people just chatting about this issue on Twitter were able to get it right. But there was probably a few people also who said, well, you might be predicting the outcome of this prematurely. It's just the federal district court that has said this. Of course, I was saying it before they had said it yet, but I didn't see how there was any other outcome possible, really. The idea that the federal district court would come up with a formulation that says that, everything, including, right down to the color of ink that can be used to print ballots, required the legislature to act, seemed absurd. And just wasn't going to go that far, and that's how there was no logical way to avoid that if you were going to open it up to this kind of suit. Well, anyway, the federal district court did agree with me, and better than that, the circuit court agreed with the federal district court and said so. And though it was appealed to the Supreme Court, here it's not that the Supreme Court said necessarily that they agree with the district court and the circuit court. It just said, we don't find enough grounds for even admitting of the possibility that we would disagree to bother taking up the case. So it's not an explicit endorsement, but it does end the case and says there are no more appeals available to you. The last court of appeal available, the Supreme Court, says we're not going to touch it. And that has the effect of letting the circuit court's ruling lie, and the circuit court ruling said that the federal district court got it right, so that's that. They got it right, and you would have gotten the right answer if you had been following along on Twitter way back then instead. Okay, so that's pretty amazing. I just thought that was interesting, and we wanted to note that for the record. Anyway, now time to turn to some of the other things that require a little bit more time to discuss. Let's see. There are so many. Where can we turn to first? There's so many things that I've put aside here that I've thought were worth noting. And here's one that I meant to note the other day when I saw it. I thought this was nicely stated by Twitter friend and show friend Bobblespeak, now operating on Twitter under the name of Mask Wearer for Truth, but you can find the Bobblespeak account very easily. It's easy enough to spell. This was a good point. Playing off of the March 7th tweet from Julian Zelizer, a historian at Princeton University and a CNN political analyst. Julian had stated, I guess, in response to the passage in the Senate of the COVID relief bill, the American Rescue Plan Act, similar to something we noted the other day about the last several Democratic presidencies having to start with the passage of economic relief bills, and noting the pattern here. Another pattern of more recent vintage, noted here by Julian. In March of 2020, all the Senate Democrats voted for Trump's COVID stimulus and relief bill, the initial one when at the onset of the pandemic, right? Trump proposes a relief bill, all Democrats on board. Because why? They want to get help to people. In December of 2020, nearly every Senate Democrat voted for Trump's second COVID stimulus and relief bill. Comes now, March of 2021, where no Senate Republicans were willing to vote for Biden's COVID stimulus and relief package. A pretty clear sign, Julian says, of asymmetric polarization, right? We certainly were staunchly opposed to Trump and didn't want him to be able to claim any credits, if we could help it, for anything at all. But the realities of the pandemic were, look, we need to put that aside and facilitate some relief here because we care about people and helping them make it through this pandemic. Anyway, so Bob will speak, noting for the record here, this is the story of American politics in this era. If you don't get this right, you don't get anything. And I thought that, too, an important capper on Zelizer's observation. Important observation, yes, and he kind of gets around to the capper at the end by saying, well, this is evidence of asymmetric polarization. Well, yes, but thanks to Bobblespeak for putting an even finer point on it, I think, and wanted to share that one with you, and I guess I'll share that tweet. I did retweet it when I saw it, and now we'll include it in today's roundup as well. All right, let's see. Other interesting items. I feel like there are some things back here that I've scrolled down to try and find some things that we've skipped for several days. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, there are a couple here. But I don't know if I can decide on what's the most important and what isn't. Let me jump over to here. This one. This is a follow-up on something that I guess I should have brought up yesterday when we spoke with Joan, because it was a follow-up from the week prior. Do you remember? Think way back, not to yesterday, Tuesday, but a week before, when Joan was with us and brought up what was going on, of course, in Idaho, and the amount of money that the Idaho Republican legislature had cost the state in by forcing through partisan bills that were destined to be overturned in the courts, and of course then cost the state millions of dollars to try to defend in the courts, only to ultimately end up losing in the courts. So you take your messaging bill, but not only make it a failure as a legislative initiative, but also cost the state several million more dollars defending it along the way. And she mentioned that a former Chief Justice of Idaho's Supreme Court had raised some serious objections and was conducting an ongoing political campaign to try to bring an end to this wasteful practice. And she shared with me this article, which we haven't had a chance to bring up and discuss. So why not today? Enough is enough. Idaho legal experts create group to take on unconstitutional legislation. The Committee to Protect and Preserve the Idaho Constitution is what they're calling it. And they say they are working to prevent unconstitutional legislation from becoming law in the first place. Joe Paris writing this, and it's published here on KTVB, TV Boise, I would imagine. KTVB, on their website here, and then, which of course they're blocking with a nice pop-up at the last minute. Joe Paris, the writer here, as he follows the 2021 legislative session, Jim Jones, it's an unfortunate name, but he's an elderly guy and probably preceded the infamous Jim Jones, retired Chief Justice of the Idaho Supreme Court. Doesn't even look the same, but okay. Says he has concerns about legislation that he believes is unconstitutional advancing at the State House. He says he's finally seen enough. Maybe we need to get some lawyers together to resist it, Jones said. He found veteran legal experts that shared his opinion, and thus a group was created. It's the Committee to Protect and Preserve the Idaho Constitution, Jones said. There has been an unprecedented effort by the Idaho legislature. Why am I making this mistake? This season to ignore the Constitution, this session. Gosh, the reading skills declining. Since 2004, the state of Idaho has lost 8 cases involving a single law, passed by the state legislature that was challenged for being unconstitutional. Okay, probably several laws, just incorrectly written there. At least one bill passed during last session is also currently in legal limbo. All legal fees are paid by Idaho taxpayer dollars out of the Constitutional Defense Fund, created in 1995 to defend the state's legal rights against the federal government. Yeah, over $3 million have gone out to defend unconstitutional bills. I don't know why they call it the Constitutional Defense Fund. I think they ought to call it the Unconstitutional Bill Defense Fund, Jones said. That's a better name for it. The committee, which includes 2 former Idaho attorneys general, a former deputy attorney general, and a senior lawyer of the Idaho Bar, aim to work as a watchdog group. We're going to, number 1, blow the whistle when the legislature starts moving legislation that would violate provisions of the Constitution, and secondly, if need be, go into a courtroom to oppose those efforts, Jones said. So far, the committee has identified at least 5 pieces of legislation this session that they believe are unconstitutional. They involve the governor's executive power, the attorney general's power, and ballot initiative rules changes. So many of these people come to the legislature and they say, well, I believe in constitutional government. But when it comes to upholding the Constitution, they're not very faithful to what they profess to believe, Jones said. We want to let people know why various proposals are violative of the constitutional provisions, separation of powers, and checks and balances so that they can evaluate what their legislators are doing and maybe give them time to think about it in retirement. Well put there. Jones points out that the Idaho legislature has a long record of passing legislation that the Attorney General's office told them was unconstitutional. He adds that this isn't a political play and they're not on anyone's side, they're just on the side of the law. People just don't like the fact that the Attorney General has told them they can't do something because it's a violation of the Constitution, Jones said. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear some clown who will tell them, oh yeah, you can do that, but then they get taken to court and they just end up with egg on their face. It's a common problem, not just in Idaho. When this happens, again, Jones says it costs Idaho taxpayers lots of money. The Committee to Protect and Preserve the Idaho Constitution is not a symbolic gesture, Jones says. He says they have a growing group of Idaho legal experts joining their cause, ready to take action if lawmakers continue to pass legislation they believe is unconstitutional. We intend to go as far as we need to go in order to get unconstitutional legislation off the books, Jones said. All right. So I just wanted to sort of note that, at least for the record. It's not necessarily a national story, but it is one of nationwide importance because Idaho's not even nearly the only state doing it. Just they happen to have a real rash of it. And I wonder whether the creation of that fund for defending created by the Ohio legislature, I keep doing it, the Idaho legislature, just made things worse, where they just said, well, let's take this risk because the court case we've already set aside money for it, so what the hell, let's fight this stuff, and, then we'll run against liberal activist judges that invalidate our stupid legislation along the way. I wouldn't be terribly surprised about that. Let's see. There's also, another of, this one's been lingering around for a while, but perhaps we'll throw this one in there since we're talking about the courts. A piece from March 1st, lawandcrime.com, where Matt Nahum wrote up the last gasp of the Sidney Powell Kraken lawsuits. Those all now relegated to the ash heap of history, as they say, but I thought I would note it was the same sort of treatment at the Supreme Court. Supreme Court rejects Sidney Powell's election fraud petitions without further comment. It wasn't an earth-shattering Monday morning way back in March 1st when it came to Supreme Court orders, but court watchers may have noticed that the justices, without comment or explanation, jettisoned more lingering 2020 election challenges. It happened 1 week after the SCOTUS cleared out several similar cases, and the morning after Donald Trump repeated his stolen election lie to his loyal followers at CPAC. The Supreme Court rejected 2 mandamus petitions that Sidney Powell and other Kraken-aligned lawyers filed in late December. Those cases styled as In re Tyler Bauer et al. And In re William Feehan. Don't bother remembering the names. The cases took issue with the election results in Arizona and Wisconsin, where Trump lost to Joe Biden. The petition for writs of mandamus are denied. The court said, that's it. That's the order. That's the whole thing. I thought that was pretty remarkable all by itself. The matter-of-factness and brevity stands in stark contrast to the urgency and, quote, public importance that the lawyers communicated in the since-dismissed petitions. A submission directly to this court seeking an extraordinary writ of mandamus is unusual, but it has its foundation, they were pleading at the time. While such relief is rare, this court will grant it where a question of public importance is involved, or where the question of is of such a nature that it is peculiarly appropriate that such action by this court should be taken, each of the mandamus petitions said. Each of the petitions also presented 4 questions for the court to answer, and they declined to answer every single one of them. So how do you like that? But this was the basis of their suit. Whether presidential electors have standing to challenge the outcome of a presidential election for fraud and illegality that caused the defeat of their candidate. No answer necessary. Whether federal courts have and should exercise jurisdiction under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983, whether over claims by presidential electors that the presidential election was stolen from them by fraud and illegality under color of law in violation of their constitutional rights under the Elections and Electors Equal Protection and Due Process clauses of the U.S. Constitution. Again, no answer necessary there. They're alleging a violation of their civil rights under color of law under Section 1983. Third, whether a claim by presidential electors to decertify the results of a presidential election and enjoin voting in the Electoral College by the rival slate of electors is barred by laches. Remember that? When it's brought within the state law statute of limitations for post-certification election contests and before the post-recount recertification. And finally, whether the remedial powers of a federal court under Section 1983 and 1988 include invalidation of an unconstitutionally conducted election and an injunction against presidential electors appointed in such an election from voting in the Electoral College. And the answer is, the answer is no answer. But the real answer, of course, is no, 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 and no. And whatever. We'll just basically leave it at that. I just wanted to note for the record, it doesn't do much to stop Republicans from complaining. They still insist that they haven't had a real hearing, a real day in court, because no court will examine the substance of their objections. It's just that none of the substance of their objections has any standing to be brought in court, and no relief that they seek is available to them as a matter of law either. So there's just nothing to consider, period. End of appeal, I guess. That's really it. All right, let's see. A couple of other items that we might be able to cram in here before closing out. We haven't noted yet for the record this story from late February, just to add to the pile of problems for Marjorie Taylor Greene. A K-file entry from over at CNN, Andrew Kaczynski, of course, behind this one, and M. Steck, along with him on the byline, close ally of Marjorie Taylor Greene among those in Capitol mob. What do you know? A close ally of Georgia Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene took part in the January 6th mob at the Capitol and said he was among those who eventually made their way into the building. Greene, you know all about her, who's got a history of promoting dangerous and violent conspiracies and comments, encouraged the big lie that the election was stolen from former President Donald Trump, blah, 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 and fanned the flames of the insurrection by telling her supporters to fight for Trump. In tweets after the Capitol insurrection, Green falsely suggested that those who had broken into the Capitol were not Republicans, and instead falsely implied so-called Antifa were dressed up as Trump supporters, and that they were the ones really to blame. In fact, though, Anthony Aguero, a conservative live streamer, activist, and associate of Green's, said on video following the January 6th assault on the Capitol that he had been among those who entered and attacked those who had falsely claimed attacked those who falsely claimed it was done by Antifa. Okay, so it's interesting. Aguero is like, no, it wasn't Antifa, it was us. And his good friend Green, I guess, is left flat-footed by that. And he goes on and admits it. We were all there. It was not Antifa and it was not BLM. It was Trump supporters that did that yesterday. I'm the first to admit it, being one myself, said Aguero in a video posted on January 7th. I walked amongst all those people, he added, later defending entering the Capitol. Green and Aguero have worked closely together over the years on causes such as immigration, the border wall, and have attended pro-Trump rallies together. In many since-deleted videos saved by CNN's K-File, Green repeatedly calls Aguero amazing and a friend. On social media, Aguero has called Green one of my closest friends. And okay, these two close friends apparently agree or disagree on who attacked the Capitol that day, except that one who was actually involved in the riot admits it, and the other one, I guess, is looking to cover her tracks. And I think she actually at some point says, well, geez, I didn't know he had been in the Capitol. I'm busy being a member of Congress. Okay, well, whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of note that for the record as part of the pile of evidence against Marjorie Taylor Greene. There was another similar story at about the same time, as I recall, about another. Oh, yes, right. I wanted to at least note this one for the record. Again, not the most important national stories at the moment, but I did want to at least make sure that they were on the record somewhere. This one reported by the Daily Beast. 3%er truck at Capitol on January 6th belongs to, I love the headline, Hitler quoting representative's husband. You remember this one, right? At least one baseball bat wielding man tied to the far-right militia group has been arrested for his alleged role in the insurrection. Adam Ronsley, Kelly Wheel, and Jackie Kucinich on the byline for the Daily Beast piece here. A pickup truck parked at the U.S. Capitol building and bearing a 3%er militia sticker on the day of the January 6th riot belongs to the husband of freshman U.S. Representative Mary Miller of Illinois, the very same one who approvingly quoted Adolf Hitler at the rally the day earlier. You remember that? It was a minor story on the show. At some point, researchers on Twitter first noticed the Ford pickup truck with the far-right militia's decal parked on the Capitol grounds in footage posted to social media and taken by CBS News. The presence of a vehicle with a militia decal so close to the Capitol, inaccessible to normal vehicle traffic, raised questions about how it got there and whether it belonged to any of the hundreds of suspects involved in the deadly riot. But in an email to the Daily Beast, Chris Miller, Representative Miller's husband and a member himself of the Illinois House of Representatives, conceded that the truck belonged to him, even as he pleaded ignorance about the militia group. I don't know why I have it. He actually says, an army friend gave me the decal. I don't know what it is. I thought it was a cool decal, so I stuck it on my car. That, not really a very reasonable excuse, but I think more important, I don't know if they get to it in this piece or not, and we won't know either because we don't have the time to read all the way through it. But basically, what it looks to me like my own experience from working on Capitol Hill, I'm sure things have changed a little bit since then in terms of parking privileges, but we're talking about getting that truck past those barricades that get raised and lowered. If you've ever been driving a vehicle around the east front of the Capitol at any point in the last couple of years, you would have noticed these things. You just can't do it. But members of Congress and their staff with appropriate decals and license plates can get past them so that you can pick up a member directly from the house and say, run him over to the airport. Not run him over with the car, but put him in the car and drive him or her to the airport. but otherwise normal vehicle traffic, no, you can't get there. Which basically probably means that Mary Miller gave her husband one of those decals or passes that he put in his car and used on January 6th to more conveniently participate in the riots and sacking of the Capitol. And who knows, all the other stories we heard about what's been stored in people's pickup trucks with 3%er decals and other militia decals. Parking one on the East Front Plaza is an awfully dangerous thing to do, and she really needs to be held to account for that one. There really ought to be an ethics committee investigation into that one. That's why I thought I'd bring it back up. We got more, of course, for the rest of the week, but first, Justice Putnam takes you over for the next hour on his program next.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
And, of course, it's the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. What's he got on tap for you? Representative Swalwell vows to do all he can to make sure those 14 senators don't return to Washington. Which 14? Well, it's a surprise. We'll keep it for you and for Justice to reveal to you next. And why might they never come?